Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from YourBlackWorld.com, and as you know, I like to bring people to you that I think can be inspiring and informative and all of the above. And the person that I'm meeting on my trip to New Mexico is Dr. Belinda Wallace. And Belinda, or Dr. Wallace, is a professor at New Mexico State University.
University of New Mexico.
Oh, sorry, University of Mexico. Oh, oops, I screwed that up already. And she is an expert in Africana studies, but also she's just done a lot of great things in her career, and I know she focuses on the Caribbean. And I felt that Dr. Wallace would be somebody that we should hear from. So, in order to allow her to correct the record, because I'm sure I said a couple of things wrong about her background, I will first say hello, Dr. Wallace. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you, Dr. Watkins?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Now, but in order for me to correct what I just said, can you tell me exactly what your expertise is and what you got your PhD in and what you teach?
I received my PhD from the University of Maryland College Park in comparative literature, with an emphasis on post-colonial lit. And my area of specialties is the Caribbean. And I came to the University of New Mexico as a postdoctoral fellow in Africana Studies, in Caribbean Studies. They were looking for a Caribbeanist, a specialist in that particular area of the post-colonial. And so that's how I ended up here. I currently serve a joint appointment with Africana Studies in English.
Okay, got you. Okay, so your doctorate was in Africana Studies.
No, my master's was.
Okay, got
but
you.
my PhD was not. My PhD was in technically comparative literature, but the way in which my program was structured at the University of Maryland allowed for an interdisciplinary approach, an intersectional approach to literature. And so I was able to do Africana Studies, in essence, under the umbrella of comparative lit. Okay. So, take classes in African theology or African literature or African American history and couple that with the Caribbean studies that I was doing. All of this, of course, around literature because that is my area, but it wasn't limited to the African diaspora. It was more of a post-colonial transatlantic approach to literature. And so what I end up doing is looking at the global black experience, blacks in Latin America, blacks in Europe, as well as blacks in the Caribbean in the United States.
Okay, good stuff. Well, it's really funny you talk about the Caribbean. Yesterday, I spent a lot of time with another great person from the Caribbean by the name of Louis Farrakhan, and Farrakhan's interesting because as he describes it, he says that black people kind of have a romance with him, where there are lots of celebrities who are in the mainstream who won't say his name in public because they feel that they'll get in trouble for saying that, but they'll get on the phone and call him for advice, maybe because they see him as a liberated African American. So do you think that in the black community, do you think that we're still seeking our freedom to a point, or what do you think in terms of how we've evolved as a people?
I think that's a very interesting question considering the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation. This notion of freedom is a tricky one, and I think it depends on your definition. People often conflate freedom with progress. I think black people have made great strides, and we have made progress in this nation, hence this conversation, hence my ability to stand in front of a classroom and teach predominantly white students, where, that wasn't something that my grandmother or perhaps even my mother could have envisioned. And so there absolutely has been progress. But freedom, I would say no, because freedom would imply full participation in the American experience, not just democracy, not simply electing a president who identifies as African American, not simply looking at the laws that have passed when people go out of their way to circumvent those laws. And in many ways, we're losing progress. If you look at the Texas education system and the way in which they choose to create their history books, their textbooks, right? What are our children learning when such crucial information is being excluded? Or the language that they choose to include in the book, again, circumvent the actual happenings in the nation. And so freedom becomes a tricky idea. I think that if we define it as an absence of enslavement, then yes, black people are free. But if we define it as full participation in the nation, then absolutely not, because I think there are still many, many obstacles, including in academia, including in corporate America. There are just so many more barriers that Black people have to overcome in order to gain full participation that I can't say, yes, we's free now. Are we on our way? Absolutely. Have we obtained it? No, it's a process, an ongoing process.
Okay, so the last question I want to ask you is, you and I had a conversation earlier about the Obama presidency.
Yes.
And what this has kind of done to inspire us and empower us, but also in some areas to cripple us as a community. Is there a way you can summarize your perception of what's happened to Black America over the last 4.5 years?
I think in some ways we've experienced a historical growth in many areas. Black people, by sheer numbers, could not have put Barack Obama in the White House. We needed other races and ethnicities to vote for him to get him in the House. Just numerically speaking, we couldn't have done it. And not every Black person in the United States, as we well know, voted for him. So in some ways, I think that showed our political might. That showed the unification that perhaps has been missing. And that also showed a glimpse of what the future can hold for Black people. I think in other ways, it also brought out some divisive behaviors. And I think that for African Americans or people of African descent, because we do have a large community of Black people who do not identify as African American, they're African, they're Afro-Hispanic, etc. But for Black people in the Americas, we're going to have to figure out a way to overcome differences, especially as it relates to class, as it relates to education, as it relates to region, in order to reach that greater goal of full participation. And what I fear in terms of the status of Black America is two things. One, there is no longer a Black America, right? Because the diversity of Black Americans has to be acknowledged. And two, can we overcome our diversity in order to create strategic alliances and unifications that would allow us full participation as a race?
Wow. Well, that's very thoughtful stuff. And, I want to say, Dr. Wallace, the reason I wanted to talk to you on the air, just for everybody to know, she didn't expect to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's very impromptu.
Yeah, I know. But people that know me know that that's how I live. I live impromptu. But I appreciate you rolling with me and being flexible and allowing me to have this conversation with you because, you and I both agree that scholars have things that we can offer our community, and that whatever way there is for us to do that, we should embrace that. So I appreciate you sharing with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Watkins. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was an absolute pleasure.
All right, the pleasure's all mine. All right. Well, thank you all for checking us out at yourblackworld.com, and until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.